Today is our word of the week going on. It's one of those words that people use a lot, but I hear it misused a lot as well, or if not misused, at least misunderstood. And that word is patience, right? We all think of patience and kind of explain patience in the realm as to wait for something or to wait for something calmly. But in all reality, it can mean so much more than that. But a lot of times we hear the word and we just think of waiting or we think of waiting calmly. But really, patience is about being able to accept a situation calmly for what it is. Now, that can't apply to waiting. Hey, Dallas, good to see you on here. That can apply to waiting, obviously, like waiting patiently is waiting calmly. But it can apply to other things as well, like having patience with yourself is the ability to accept yourself from where you're at. Having patience with the situation is the ability to accept the situation for what it is. Having patience with other people is the ability to accept them for who they are. Now, this doesn't mean, like, say, let's take situations, for example. This doesn't mean that you can't work to change a situation or that it's bad to not like the way a situation is. But you can't just completely scrap something, an idea, or completely scrap a situation and start from the ground up all the time. A lot of times, what's really necessary to move from where you're at or a situation that you're at to where you want to go involves being able to know exactly where it's at and calmly accept exactly where it's at right now. That doesn't mean you have to leave well enough alone. It just means that once you understand all the ins and outs and little details of exactly why a situation is what it is, exactly why you are where you are, then you can start taking small steps, tiny adjustments to help you get to where you want to go from where you're at. But if you never take the time to have patience, or in other words, to accept the situation that you're in or to accept where you're at, then you're going to have a very difficult time finding a path to get to where you want to go. Because when you look at a map, you can find the place you want to go, but you're not going to be able to find the best directions to get there until you know exactly where you're at. And this is really no different, right? If you're not 100% sure of the situation where you're at or the details of where you're at or whatever it is, then how can you know what exactly needs tweaked and what exactly needs changed to get you to where you are trying to go, right? So it's really, really important to be able to have patience with that. I mean, just to be an ability to accept a situation from where it is and to learn all the ins and outs and the details. That way you can actually take what's already there, what you're already in, what you have a good stock of your resources, a good stock of what you don't like, a good stock of the problems, and you can prioritize what needs to change first and how you can use your resources to make the changes that you want to make. And this is what creates what we talk about as Kaizen. That's basically just a Japanese term I like to throw around, that means, because I'm a martial artist, that means constant improvement, or in other words, being able to take where you're at on a technique or where you're at on an understanding to calmly accept it, understand it, and then make adjustments in your life one little step at a time to improve just a tiny percent every single day, right? Improving 1% a day will get you a lot farther in a year than improving 100% a day, but then realizing that creates a whole nother set of problems. So you lose 75% and then you gain 20 and then you lose 10 and then you're going to end up a lot farther a year later just by focusing on gaining 1% a day, gaining one small change a day. But that all starts, like I said, with patience and your ability to accept calmly where you're at in those situations. One of the other ones that really drives me nuts is patience with other people, especially when it comes to social media. And I don't know, maybe I'm just getting old, but I didn't grow up with social media, right? Like, I use it now. There's things on there now, and I pay some attention to it. But I learned my personal interactions with people, my interpersonal interactions, face to face. And that's a whole different thing. For one, you don't have forever to sit there and think about your response. And so you have to be willing to admit quickly if you don't know something or if you need time to think about something. And admitting you don't know something is something that a lot of people find very difficult, but I learned a lot of emotional intelligence in that when I was younger, in interpersonal connections, and going, hey man, I need a day to think about that before I can form an opinion on it. Because I couldn't come up with something that second. It wasn't like I could just run over to Google and get an answer and throw something out there. And the thing is people existed then too. A lot of people then too would still try to fake their way through these conversations and through knowledge, but it's real easy to see right through that face to face, and people suddenly start to go, oh man, they're so full of themselves, they're full of it, they don't understand what's going on. And so, there was that with interpersonal, with face to face communications. But, and on top of that, there's conflict, right? So in face to face communications, it's easy to create conflict. You can just simply be rude to somebody, you can be hateful towards them, whatever, and it will create conflict. If you did not want conflict, as most people were like most of the time, just wanted to go out their business and be on their way, then you mostly kept your opinion to yourself. You were friendly with people, you looked people in the eye, but you didn't say things that would purposefully create that conflict because you didn't want that drama in your life. You didn't want to get punched in the face, whatever the case might be. You didn't want to, like if you said this to this person, then they're going to go tell this person, and then your dad's going to find out, and then they go come back, whatever it was, right? And so that's the way I learned my interpersonal communications. But then, like in today's day and age, it seems that kind of stuff has been changed, right? Or a lot of people have learned, and several adults today have learned their interpersonal communications through social media, where there's not that sort of instant pressure to find a response, where if you don't want conflict, you'll find yourself more willing to say that you don't understand or don't know something, while at the same time there is less fear of the conflict or repercussions of what you say and your actions, even though those repercussions and consequences are still real. They're just not the same as they used to be. Instead of getting punched in the face, now it's like something might go viral and the community might turn against you for whatever opinion, or something whatever it might be, right? It doesn't really matter. But the thing is that that concept isn't new. The consequences for saying something to a particular person, the fact of there being consequences for that is not new, right? That's not new with social media. That was around back then as well. But one of the things I've seen with this is that with that lack of fear for conflict has kind of come also a lack of patience for other people, or a lack of ability to accept them for their thoughts, where they are, their opinion, maybe have friendly discussion, this, that, and the other. I see all over social media people talk about, just trying to have a friendly discussion, while at the same time they're cursing and they're being very rude and derogatory in a way that they probably wouldn't do face to face, out of fear of the escalation of the situation. When you're face to face and you actually do want to have a good conversation but don't want to escalate the conflict, you'll tend to stay calm and say things that are less rude. You'll tend to frame your communication in a way that is more neutral, and you'll tend to focus on trying to reach an understanding rather than trying to force your point. Versus on social media, it's a little bit different. There's people tend to be a little less accepting of where another person's at, and they feel more brave to be a little more rude or a little more in your face or a little more all or nothing, rather than finding central compromise to learn from each other, like was the case with interpersonal communications where I grew up. And I know Brittany grew up that way as well, where, like I say, we learned interpersonal communications face to face. And I've just been thinking about this a lot today, seeing the differences between that and learning interpersonal communications online. And the thing is there's similarities too. Like I say, the consequences are still there. They're just different than they used to be. And I think people are starting to wake up to that a little bit, that the consequences are there when people thought they weren't, just because there's not that fear of getting punched in the face. Brittany, keyboard warriors. Yes, there you go. How were classes this morning, Brittany? We have quite a few there. I wasn't there. I was doing work here. But yeah, so my point being that I feel like it's more important than ever that we teach our kids to understand that patience doesn't just mean to wait, but that patience also means to accept, and how important it is to accept other people for who they are. And I think parents of this generation of parents is actually doing a relatively good job of that. I have seen more teenagers and younger people that are far more accepting of people that are different from them than I have seen in my generation when we were kids, or even my dad's generation, right? And so I think we are doing a better job of that. But I also think it's super important to keep that in the the limelight of parenting, right? That we teach people to be accepting of others. Doesn't mean we have to like what another person thinks. It doesn't mean that we have to like what another person does. It doesn't even mean we have to like another person. It just means that we can also reach a point of patience, of understanding that that is who they are. They don't really want to change, and no amount of trying to convince them, yell at them, be rude to them, or otherwise is going to make any difference. That's really just creating conflict where conflict is not going to make a difference. It's not going to change anything. It's not going to make anything better. They were great. Had 3 try classes this morning. Oh wow, 3 on top of regular students. Very, very cool. I always love when people come in and try classes. I usually like to be there. Like I say, I had a lot of work to do this morning. I don't know if you guys know, but I do my work in double shifts. So I work in the morning on the back end of computer stuff, usually till about 1 p.m. And then I take a couple hours of a break, and then I go back and work in the evenings. And that's usually where I focus on classes, training, and etc. Which we've got some pretty cool stuff coming up. And, I'm just talking about Kaizen. We always like to do those small improvements and stuff. So we've got like the weapons program coming out. The morning classes just started today, but we're also working on some curriculum tweaks, especially for the young kids programs. I'm not gonna give too much yet, but I'm pretty excited about it. And some curriculum tweaks for advanced strengths as well, and some of their grappling material and stuff like that. So got some cool stuff like that coming out. But I appreciate how much patience the community has had with us over the years in learning lessons in how to do this better. And the mistakes that we've made, don't think we haven't made mistakes to get where we are. That's how we got where we are. Is every mistake that we made, we accepted it for what it is and took steps to try to survive it and improve on it, right? And that takes patience. Not just, like I say, it's not just about calmly waiting. It's about calmly being able to accept a situation for where it is. If you don't know where you are at exactly, then it's very, very hard to figure out what roads to take, what paths to take, and to lay out a plan to get where you want to go, right? So like I said, patience with yourself in order to get where you want to go from where you're at, patience with situations that you're in, accepting them for what they are rather than just denying them, so that way you can see exactly what it is and figure out what little pieces you can change, just one little thing every day, every week, until you get to where you want to be. And patience with others, being able to be okay with someone being different with you, be okay with someone having different opinions of you, be okay with someone not liking you, and still be okay with yourself and stay calm about it and not let it affect your self-esteem. That involves being able to have patience for others and accept that there are a ton of people in the world, all with tons of experiences, all completely different from each other and completely different from you, right? Now, the trick is bringing that patience and that acceptance into our communications with each other, right? Into the ways that we talk to each other, which changes every generation. I mean, from mail to phones to cell phones to texting to social media, right? And every level along the way, society always, and I look at the history of it, it's quite fun to see the pattern. Society always kind of takes it too far. Every time there's a new type of communication, society always kind of takes it a little too far until it starts to cause problems and then backs out and evens itself off after 2 to 5 to 10 years, depending on how revolutionary the change was. And realizing that every new kind of communication that comes out, there's always this feeling of, oh, well, now the consequences I used to be afraid of in face-to-face communications aren't there with this phone communication, so I can say things I wouldn't say, I can talk in a way I wouldn't say. But then society starts to learn, well, it may not be the same consequences, I can't get punched in the face, but there still are consequences. They can complain to my boss, they can complain to my parents, they can turn people against me, whatever. And then, we even out and learn how to better communicate on the phone. Then the same thing happens with texting, and it's at first, remember guys, it was considered so rude and unprofessional and things along those lines for a long time. It got taken too far, used too much, because you could text things and then claim it was a misunderstanding, right? Or claim that it was meant for somebody else or whatever else, and things got pushed too far. And then over a couple of years, it started to level back off as there were consequences for those text messages, especially as phones started to have cameras and they could take screenshots and stuff. Then same thing happened with smartphones and social media. Same thing's going on right now. People take it too far, and then it's going to back off as people realize that there are still consequences to the way that we choose to communicate. Now, I'm not saying you can't communicate your truth. It's not about necessarily always keeping things to yourself. It's about the words that you choose. It's the way you choose to go about it. It's how much actual thought you put into it. Are you trying to make a change? Are you trying to make the world what you think would be a better place? Or are your words reflective of that? Or are your words designed to create conflict and echo chambers, right? So that's something that society's dealing with right now. And I think it stresses a lot of people out, no matter where you're at on that spectrum, no matter where you stand on that situation. I think it stresses a ton of people out, even playing that game or dealing with it. Some people feed on the drama, there's always that. But I think it stresses a lot of people out, and they just don't know what to do about it. So, starting off with learning to be patient and being accepting that people are different, and then making sure that you try to design your messages to actually reach a larger and larger audience if you really do want to make a change, rather than being inflammatory and creating conflict, right? It all comes down to two types of communication. I can say the same thing in two different ways. I can say it in one way, that in a way that I'm trying to relate to the audience that I'm talking to, and I'm trying to get them relate to new people and convince them of something and get them on board of a change that needs to make. Or I can say it in a way that's meant to get a few yes men and create controversy from anyone and conflict from anyone who sees it different. And honestly, I feel like that's one of the things I test as a level of maturity. Like, right, when we're looking for new staff members, when we're looking for new leadership and stuff like that, is this a person that speaks in a way like they're trying to create conflict, or does this person speak in a way like they're trying to resolve conflict and bring people together and unite people? Because you can say the same things. It's all about the words that you choose. And this is a big part of our leadership program and why we talk about communication skills, right? And it's a really, really important thing. And I feel like with everybody being able to have their own platform that can grow as big as they want it to by finding the people that want to follow them, it becomes more and more important for everybody, not just advertising experts and content writers, but for everybody to be able to learn a certain level of emotional maturity and communication skill to be able to understand the differences between creating conflict and creating change, right? And there's a big difference between creating conflict and creating change. It all boils down to patience. Can you calmly accept people where they are at and then find a middle ground to slowly move with them towards them, or maybe get them to move towards you or your ideas and find something that can actually move forward? Or are you just doing it to create drama, get attention, or whatever it might be? Or are you maybe just doing it because it seems like that's what everyone else is doing and they're getting attention for it, so you think you're going to get attention for it, and then it's creating more drama and conflict than you anticipated? I've talked to several people about this in private one-to-one conversations, people that were overstressed, people that were freaking out, especially over the past couple of years, about things, and then as it turned out, it was because of all this attention they were getting for different social media posts and stuff, a lot of negative attention and stuff like that from friends, family, and loved ones who would come talk to them face to face about the kind of stuff they were posting. And it's like, well, wait a minute, man, like, here's the thing. Are you communicating in a way that you're actually trying to get your message across in a way that people will relate to it and understand to it? Or are you communicating it in a way that you've seen other people communicating it to get a rise out of people, and then now you're complaining that you're stressed out due to you getting a rise out of people about it, right? Some people live on drama, feed on drama, but other people sometimes just want to fit in. So they do things that create drama and then ultimately end up extremely stressed out, extremely anxious, extremely depressed. Can't understand why, when in all reality it's because they copied the drama makers, but they're not drama queens themselves. They don't feed on the drama and ended up kind of making their lives harder than they had to be. Then if you just went back and took mama and grandma's old advice from when I was a kid, and we do on interpersonal communications of, sometimes it's okay to keep your opinion to yourself until you know what someone else thinks. It's okay if you don't want to create conflict to just put on a smile and say, oh, that's nice and all that, and not have to add your piece to the conversation, right? And that all come back to how we learn how to do interpersonal communication face to face. Anyway, I feel like I'm just repeating myself at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and jump off here until I see you guys again. Patience. Remember to try, even no matter how hard it is, try to calmly as possible, accept situations for where they're at, accept yourself for where they're at, the good, the bad, the flaws, the great, all of it. because only by knowing exactly where you are at and being able to pinpoint that on your roadmap of life can you map a course to where you want to be. Otherwise, you're just stuck staring at where you want to be and constantly asking, how do I get from here to there? And you can't get from here to there until you know where here is. Same thing when you're talking about communicating with others, right? And having patience with others and calmly accepting that it's okay for other people to be different. It's okay for you to not like them. It's okay for you to not like their opinions. It's okay to not like someone's opinion and still like them, right? Like I've got tons of friends like that. So it is what it is. Till I see you guys again, be the best teammate you can be and be the best at being you.